Hey everyone, so today I'm going to show you a Noelle hybrid carry deck. I'm quite a fan of Noelle as a character ever since she came out in the original version because she kind of reminds me of Violet Evergarden, and also her lore is pretty interesting as well. So hopefully we get more of her story in future versions of Genshin. But anyway, I'm going to be showing you a couple of things today. I'm going to show you the deck tech, how I would play Noelle. I will also be showing you some gameplay videos. We just happen to match against the same Noelle player twice, so I've got two mirror matches to show you. I do think that the way that I've built this deck, it may not be super innovative or out of this world because I think lots of people are playing it this way as well, but it is really fun, and I just wanted to show you my take on it. So in this particular Noelle deck, I am pairing Noelle up with Oceanid, also called Rhodia of Lock, and I'm also pairing her up with the Stonehide Lawachurl. So the reason why I've kind of set this team up in this particular manner is because I want to be achieving two things. Firstly, I want Oceanid to be summoning mimics, and with using these mimics, I will be chipping my opponent's damage down. And the second thing I want to do is that I want to, spend time to set up Noelle through the use of Wolf's Gravestone because it adds a lot of damage to Noelle's attacks, right? So essentially, the aim of the game is to chip down with Oceanid, buy time with Stonehide Lawachurl, and chip even more damage down to what I call the Noelle Killzone, which is about 7 HP. Because the thing is, the moment you use sweeping time, right? This character gains sweeping time. Essentially, what this means is that your blade work will be attacking for 4. And if Noel's HP is low enough, with the Wolf's Gravestone buff, Wolf's Gravestone will add about 3 more damage to your 4 damage. So the Noelle Killzone in fact will be about 7 damage. Dealing 7 damage per normal attack is a huge deal. So you spend the entire game trying to chip your opponent's HP down, such that you can buy some time to buff up Noelle as much as possible and use her as a late game sweeper. So looking into the characters that we have, looking at Oceanid again, essentially there are a few different actions that you can take with Oceanid. The way that I like to play Oceanid is that instead of playing this, right, instead of playing Merit Wiles for 5 Hydro Element dice to summon 2 random mimics, what I like to do in turn 1 is actually to play Oceanid Mimic Summoning twice. The reason why I summon this twice, or rather I play this twice, is so that I can get 2 energy loaded up for Oceanid. That is quite critical in my particular playstyle because if you do this, if you play both, essentially, you still get 2 summons. But if you pay 1 more dice, right, you essentially get 2 energy, which brings you even closer to Titan Torrent. Titan Torrent is a pretty good burst, I would say. It's a pretty good burst attack. The only downside is that it takes 3 energy, and it assumes that you have summons on the ground as well. But essentially, the sooner you can set this up, the better. Because with this, you can deal 2 Hydro damage, and you can add an additional 2 damage for each friendly summon on the field. So it can hit your opponent for a maximum of 10 damage, and you can get this online as early as turn 2. Because essentially on turn 1, you use Ocean Mimic Summon twice, and on turn 2, you can maybe use it once more, right, for a third summon, and then you just hit in with Titan Torrent for a total of 10 damage. Sorry, no, a total of 8 damage. It is also possible to hit your opponent for a turn 2 10 damage Titan Torrent because essentially on turn 1 you play Ocean Mimic Summoning twice, on turn 2 you play it once more, and then either on turn 1 or turn 2 you also play this card, Abyssal Summons. It only costs 2 and it summons 1 random Hilichurl. And this is considered a summon as well. So as long as you have 3 Ocean Mimics and 1 Abyssal Hilichurl on the field, it means that your Oceanid's burst is going to do 10 damage, and that is pretty massive. And this is actually something that you can set up even on turn 1, because you can just spend 3 dice playing Oceanid Mimic Summoning, and 3 dice doing it again, and then before you end your turn, you summon the Abyssal Summons, and that gets you a random Hilichurl, right? So I really like Oceanid as a first attacker to chip off your opponent's damage. The reason why I set up the team in this particular order as well is also because we're seeing the rise of control decks like Gene and Sucrose. But more than not, people play Gene rather than Sucrose, and because of that, I am putting Oceanid here and Lawachurl here. So the thinking here is that if my opponent is playing Gene, and if my opponent sends Gene out first, instead of playing the Mimics, I have a feeling that my opponent is definitely going to swap my Oceanid away so that I can disrupt, so that I can, get as little summons onto the field as possible. If that is the case, what I would do is that if I go first, I will use Search, deal 1 Hydro damage to my opponent's Gene so that I can apply Hydro to it, and then when I get swapped into Hilichurl, what I would do is that I would just use any of my Hilichurl's attack because Lawachurl, because Lawachurl enters the field with what it calls Stonehide. Um, Essentially, no, not Stonehide, Stone Fence. So essentially with Stone Fence, all your physical damage gets converted to geo damage. So by applying Hydro with Oceanid, and if you get forced to go into Lawachurl, that means that your Lawachurl can use its converted geo damage to deal even more damage against your Gene, and also set up additional shields for Lawachurl, which makes it even more beefy. And with control decks, they hate beefy characters, they hate shields on. The worst case scenario is that you start out with Oceanid, they call out the Gene, but then they don't actually swap out your Oceanid. That's fine, right? Because it means that next turn you can just keep Oceanid in anyway, and then use your Mimic Summons so that you can start to build up the damage for Tide and Torrent. So that's the way that I like to play Oceanid. I will always send her first, and in order to support her, I play things like Abyssal Summons. I also play things like Quick Knit so that I can increase the usage of my summons. And one other tip that I have for Oceanid is that when I play her, and if I have Abyssal Summons as well, what I would do is that I would go into Oceanid Mimic Summoning. I play it once. Before I play the second one, I will go into Abyssal Summons, and then followed up by another Oceanic Mimics. The reason why I stagger these plays is because Oceanic's Mimic, they will always do Hydro damage, right? But for these Hilichurls that you're going to summon, there's a 1 in 4 chance that it will be Hydro, which means that there's a 3 in 4 chance that it is non-Hydro. If it is non-Hydro, that's perfect for you, because it means that at the end of the turn, Oceanid's Mimic will deal Hydro damage, the Hilichurl will deal some other elemental damage and deal additional damage because of the elemental reaction, and then finally your Hydro Mimic, your second Hydro Mimic will deal Hydro damage again to apply damage, just in case your Geo Lawachurl get dragged out for whatever reason. At least it means that your opponent's active character has that Hydro damage to allow your Lawachurl to create additional shields. So this is basically the Oceanid uh, package, I would say. The next thing that I would have is Lawachurl. Even though I put Lawachurl in this position, it doesn't necessarily mean that I would leave him as a intermediate attacker. In the start of the video, I said that I like having Noelle as a late game sweeper, but Noelle and Lawachurl are quite interchangeable. The only way that I would preserve Lawachurl is if I know that I can get my opponent's character to die to a elemental burst. What I would do is that I would probably use Stonehide Lawachurl, attack twice, and then swap over to Noelle so that I can preserve that final burst damage on this Lawachurl. Another tip for this Lawachurl is that with its Infused Stonehide, it does have the Stone Force, but the problem with Stonehide and Stone Force is that while it gives your Lawachurl shield automatically at the start of turn, you can only use it 3 times. So When you attack, use it once because you use the Stonehide to convert it into geo damage. When your opponent attacks you, you also consume it one time. So what this means is that the Stonehide, while it looks good, it will only last for a total of 1.5 uh, attacking turns, meaning you can attack once, your opponent attacks you once, and you attack one more time, and then the Stonehide will be entirely gone. So because of that, I will be quite wary of using your Stonehide Lawachurl too flippantly, right? You have to manage his shield because his shield is a resource, it's a very, very precious resource. That is also why when I play Lawachurl, right, I like to ensure that my Oceanid has already a Dry Hydro to my opponents so that I can get additional shields up with the Stonehide Lawachurl, right, which extends the longevity of the Stonehide ability that he has. Finally, we come to Noelle. Noelle is a great character because essentially she can attack, she can defend, she can blast your opponent's heroes to outer space. Um, with her normal attack, she just deals 2 physical damage. That is nothing out of the ordinary. With Breastplate, it is pretty interesting. It deals 1 geo damage and creates 1 full plate. Essentially, what a full plate does is that it grants 2 shield points to your active character before the shield is fully consumed. The physical damage that you take is half. So basically, this helps you to halve all the different physical damage that you receive from your opponents. So one really good way to kind of make full use of this full plate is that in mirror matches, if you can see that your opponent is playing a Geo Lawachurl as well, all you need to do is to wait for your opponent's Lawachurl's Stonehide to run out, wait for their Stone Force to run out, because this means that they can no longer deal geo damage, they can only deal physical damage. And then what you do is that you swap over to Noelle, bring in the breastplate, and then you can eat up the burst that they have been saving for a while now. Right? The other really cool thing about Noelle is sweeping time for elemental burst. It costs 4, but only costs 2 energy to play. Deals 4 geo damage, um, and it gains sweeping time. What sweeping time does is that when your character uses a normal attack, it consumes 1 less geo die once per round. So essentially, this means that Noelle's Favonius Blade Workmate is going to cost two unaligned die, 2 unaligned dice instead of 3. All right. Second thing is the normal attack will also have an additional damage of 2 damage. And the physical damage is also converted to geo damage. So what you can see here is that with this Noelle skill and burst, you can consistently deal quite a bit of geo damage, which is also why I like having mimics on the field, so that I can consistently apply hydro pressure, so that when I swap over to Noelle, I can use her abilities to deal damage, but also to create more shields for herself to increase the longevity of Noelle as a character. So that's basically the full rundown of the different characters that I have. I've spoken to you about the package to support Oceanid, but I haven't spoken to you about the packages to support Noelle specifically and Geo Lawachurl. So let's go through the deck itself to point out some key cards that we have to support these 2 Geo characters, but more specifically for Noelle. So for Noelle, I included her specialization called I Got Your Back. Essentially, when you play this, you immediately use Breastplate, and what this does is that it converts your breastplate ability into something that not just shields your characters, right? But if you have a full shield being equipped on Noelle or is active on Noelle, Noelle will be able to heal 1 damage to your entire party. So sometimes you have certain situations whereby Ocean is really low, Lawachurl is really low. If you swap them in, they would die immediately and take a beating from your opponent's characters. But with I Got Your Back, essentially you can turn Noelle into a tank that revives your remaining 2 characters if they're not already dead, right? And that allows you to go in for a final knockout by swapping either of them in. I also have 2 weapons here. I have a white iron greatsword and a wolf's gravestone. The reason why I have two different weapons here is mainly because I've been testing both of them and trying to figure out which is the right choice to play. Because the thing about White Iron Greatsword is that it gives Noah +1 damage, and it costs one less die to play. But I do think that Rose Gravestone is the better option of the two, because if Noel has HP equal to 6 or less, essentially this adds +3 to her attack. So even if you don't have sweeping time online, Favonia's Blade Work essentially deals 5 damage, and 5 damage is massive because within one turn, if you can deal 5 damage twice, it essentially means that you take out a full health character. Another thing that you need to note is that recently the meta is getting a lot more defensive. You've got lots of food characters, you've got lots of shield characters. I mean, this deck included, you've got shields everywhere. And what that means is that even if you use White Iron Greatsword and +1 damage to Noelle, you may not get the full value out of this if your opponent has a shield online or has, food like the Lotus online. Basically, Noelle can't do any damage over Lotus because 1 damage +2 damage is just 3 damage, and Lotus will just eat it up. Whereas if you have Wolf's Gravestone online, even with the Lotus, at least Noelle will be able to do 2 damage. So I do think that Rose Gravestone is the right card to play. Other geo cards that I have, would be the standard Elemental Resonance Woven Stone, gives you 1 geo die. Elemental Resonance Enduring Rock. I really, really like this one. If you've seen my previous Noelle Killzone Ningguang video, I really love this card because essentially what I can do is that I can use Oceanid's Mimics to apply Hydro consistently. And then when I swap over to my Lawachurl or I swap over to Noelle, I'll be able to play this and grant even more shields for my characters. I especially love this card for Lawachurl, especially if my opponent already has Hydro applied, because this really extends the longevity of my Lawachurl's Stonehide ability and prevents him from breaking his Geo application to a much later time than it usually should last for. Other cards that I play include some sort of setup cards, such as Paimon. Um, s- so the thing here is that not every deck is should be including Paimon. I say that because there are certain decks whereby they are already explosive enough even without Paimon. If they were to take an off turn and pay 3 of the same dice just to play Paimon, it may slow down their attack. But for this particular team, I really, really like Paimon because with Paimon setup, it means that I can summon as many mimics as possible. Or if I use Paimon to support Lawachurl, essentially it also means that I can get my burst online in one turn, and I can easily knock out one of my opponent's characters because you deal 2 damage with Lava, Plama Lava, you deal 3 damage to Mono Lava, and then you deal 5 damage to Upashatu. Or even you can even deal more than that amount of damage because you can also play Movolava twice. The first one would deal 4 damage because of your Stone Force, second one deals 3 damage, and the last one deals 5 damage for a total of 12 damage. So Paimon really makes your Stonehide Lawachurl into a huge smacking beast. I also have Liban. The reason for this is because this acts as a pseudo Paimon. If I don't have Paimon and if I have some elemental die that don't quite match up, I can't really use it efficiently, I would prefer to leave 3 of them online so that I can play Liban, so that next turn I can immediately get the full value out of it and get 2 additional Omni dice from Liban. So he is pretty good in this deck because this deck can be relatively dice inefficient in a sense because I would need specific Hydro dice in order to use Mimic Summoning, and I will also need specific dice in order to play things like Movo Lava. I need 4 Geo dice to play Sweeping Time. So yeah, with this deck, sometimes you can brick, but that's where things like Paimon and Limit come in to give you that consistency over time. I also play 2 Star Signs. Star Signs can actually be really, really good because it means that you can go into Lawachurl's burst as soon as possible. It also means that if I am desperate to unleash the burst of Oceanid, essentially I can play Mimic, next turn Star Sign, and then Titan Torrent is going to do at least 6 damage, assuming I don't also have Abyssal Summonings. So 6 damage plus whatever damage I get from Ocean and Mimic is pretty good, especially for a turn 2 early play. So it can stop early setup decks like, decks with Xingqiu or decks with Yoimiya, etc. I do play 6 food items as well, just to, increase the longevity of my characters. So I play Lotus. Uh, some people may not like Lotus, but I personally like Lotus as a card. With Lotus, it forces your opponent to think twice. Like, hey, do I really want to burst against my opponent right now, because they have Lotus online, or do I just want to take the hit and allow them to absorb this 3 damage? Some people may not like this because they would say, if you can play Lotus, why don't you just play Monster Hash Brown? Why don't you play other recovery cards to guarantee that recovery? Because the recovery that you get from Lotus is conditional. It assumes that your opponent will be hitting you. But I think this is good because by playing this, I may be buying myself some time. I may be telling my opponent, hey, I'm playing this. I dare you to hit me with the burst. You can either play it right now and I'll take less damage, or you can play it later. If they do play it later, it's actually good for me because it means that I get more time to set up the rest of my characters and I delay the damage that they're going to take, and hopefully I take the tempo even before they can deal the damage to me. So I do think it's pretty neat. And the last one I play is Minty Meatrolls. I basically play this just to support Noelle, because with sweeping time, when you play this, um, it just means that your first normal attack of the turn only takes only costs 1 underlying element, and then you can hit for 3 more times. So with that, assuming your Noelle has sweeping time, assuming your Noelle has Wolf's Gravestone, assuming your Noelle has 6 or less HP, it just means that your Noelle can attack your opponent 4 times and deal a total of 28 damage, which should be more than enough to take your opponent's team out. But that said, don't forget that in order for Noelle to take the win, you also need Noelle to be fully buffed up. You need for Noelle to have her shields on so that she doesn't just die after her first attack. So all in all, I really like this deck. I'm quite comfortable with the way that I'm playing it. In summary, all you need to do is to play mimics, cause trouble for your opponents, chip them down to the Noelle Killzone, pass over to the Stonehide Lawachurl, deal even more damage, and then finally sweep things up with Noelle. And don't forget that sometimes you might want to interchange Noelle with Lawachurl, depending on the situation. I believe in the next 2 videos that I will show you, one of them I actually left Noelle as the last attacker, but the other one I leave the Lawachurl as final attacker. So yeah, have a look. Both is basically 2 mirror matches against the same opponent. They play a Noelle, Pyro Agent, and Lawachurl team. And the reason why I think it's worth watching both of them is because of the way that I've sequenced my plays and the way that I've kind of left Noelle and Lawachurl as the final attacker, differently in both instances. So yeah, do have a look. Let me know what you think. And yeah, this is a pretty fun deck. Check it out. If you have any other tips to, play Noelle with, let me know. So yeah, see you in the gameplay. Alright, so when I saw this match, I was actually pretty surprised because I didn't think that someone else would be testing the Noelle and Lawachurl package at the same time as I was going to. But when I did see this, I was a little bit intimidated because we all know how tanky Pyro Agent can be if you saw in my first video. I genuinely didn't know which way this matchup was going to go. I didn't know if my summons were going to take down the team with any sort of ease. But yeah, in this starting hand, basically I kept the Abyssal Summonings because it
There
would
is
bring
no
my
escape.
Oceanid burst online very, very quickly, and I also kept the Star Sign as well, so that I can maximize the damage that I deal with Oceanid's burst, while also trying to accelerate it as much as possible. So here you can see me trying to reroll over and over again because I was really hoping for more Hydro dice. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. So, but yeah, that's life. And my opponent has gone first here. I didn't think I was super intimidated by the fact that they went for Lawachurl first. I was actually expecting for them to come up with the Pyro agent first so that they can start to apply Pyro damage on me. But yeah, that was how it went because I thought they would apply Pyro damage so that they can create some Geo shield with that Pyro application. But apparently that wasn't the way that they were thinking of playing this matchup. So I think it made me a bit more comfortable per se. But yeah, this matchup was still like an unknown territory to me. So I see that they were playing loads of different support cards here and only attacking once, which made me think that it probably bricked a little bit, and therefore cannot be attacking consistently. Because if you start with your Lawachurl first, usually it means that you want to set it up by attacking twice and then burst the next turn. So here I was just being, a little desperate. I think I basically play out the Paimon so that I can get the consistency in future turns. And what I do here is that I think I probably play the star sign here as well to start to set up my Oceanid for the future turn. So the reason why I could afford to not use the Mimic or not deal any damage with Oceanid was because I was thinking that if I summon the Hilichurl, it means that my Hilichurl will be able to deal some damage on their Lawachurl, and that will apply some sort of element. So if I were to run into Oceanid and use Oceanid's ability next, it would do some sort of, hopefully vaporize or freeze or yeah, some sort of elemental reaction. So that was the thinking behind that. I did the reroll here, and this is actually pretty good for Oceanid because now I have a total of 6 dice that I can use with the help of Paimon. And if you notice here, I am going first because essentially instead of attacking Oceanid, I just play Star Signs, summon the Hilichurl, play Paimon, and then call it a day. So what I would do here is to try to ensure the survivability of my Oceanid, so which is why I decided to heal her for 2. And next, I believe I basically just summon. Yeah, I go in for all in for the summon. Previously, I mentioned that I would probably want to use the skill to summon one thing twice so that I can get her burst online, but in this current situation I am a little bit intimidated because the Lawachurl is fully set up, and therefore I don't know if I would want to summon 2 things instead and then pass it on to another character, but essentially yes, I did try to go for that, and I'm hoping here that their Lawachurl does not knock me out somehow because they might have things like Adapter's Temptation that can add 3 damage to their burst. That said, they do need to get through the shields that I've just set up with the help of the frog. Very helpful froggy there. And yeah, just waiting for my opponent to decide what they want to do next. So they do decide to attack me normally rather than using the burst, which I respect. I think that is probably the right play, just so that they don't waste the burst on me immediately. But in any case, that gives me the window to attack once more to deal vaporize damage and set up my Oceanid as well. So here I'm just thinking like, hey, do I want to swap into another character? For example, my own Stonehide Lawachurl, because my Oceanid is at risk of taking a beating here. But I decided to risk it for the biscuit. If my opponent here has a Adapter's Temptation, essentially I'm in trouble. But what I thought was that, okay, if I were to use my mimics and my summons to deal damage to this Lawachurl, essentially they lose their Stonehide, which means that they don't get the +1 on their burst. So it means that the maximum that they can deal is 5 damage without any buff from Adaptive Temptation. I should not get knocked out, essentially. But unfortunately, as you can see here, essentially my opponent managed to play the Attack Temptation, and that should be enough to knock out my Oceanid.
Not water, too. Water will never
But when that happened, I didn't necessarily feel super threatened yet. I might still have this. Reason for that is because I still have Mimics on the field, and this Stonehide Lawachurl
I will
only has 2
protect
HP
you.
left, and therefore it should be relatively easy for me to knock it out. Unfortunately, I did a slight miscalculation there. I didn't know that it was possible for that Lawachurl to gain back its shield, which you can if you use the Lawachurl specialization. So I thought by switching into Noelle, I will be able to knock him out with a basic attack, a normal attack. But luckily, I had the Wolf's Gravestone and enough dice to attach it. So all I had to do was to attach Wolf's Gravestone and use normal attack to deal extra damage to my opponent's Lawachurl, knocking it out. And now I'm basically thinking, okay, I need to set up for the next turn. The mimics are the ones that are giving me the additional cushion, and therefore I need to, end my turn ASAP, feed Liban some dice, and then hopefully take the upper hand from here on. So here I do manage to get in the additional hydro damage and the freeze damage on the Fatui agent, which did help to get rid of one of his shields. And notice how, in the start of the video, I was saying that, okay, this is a Noelle Hypercray deck. We want to buff up Noelle so that she can take out the game, take away the game in the late game. But essentially, instead of playing the Lawachurl up front, I am playing Noelle because I am conscious that Pyro Agent is a pretty tanky character. If he is out here and if his burst is already online, it means
Must
that
be
my
careful.
Lawachurl's Stonehide will be consumed very, very quickly, and I don't want that to happen. I want to drag out the game so that I can maximize the damage from my Lawachurl. So that's the reason why I went in with Noelle instead. So here my opponent is taking a little bit of thinking time. Maybe because we're on pretty even ground for now. The Fatui agent has the burst setup. My Noelle has a burst setup as well, and we both have um, one character in the back with full health. So they do decide to go all in against my
Not
Noelle.
for me.
She doesn't get taken out, um, but what I do is that I use that card away so that I can deal some damage. And the reason why I did that is because the card is dead in this matchup anyway. My opponent doesn't have any summons. And the second reason is because I remember that my opponent has 4 dice left, which means that they will likely, use it to attack my Noelle, and I'm fine with that because it means that, they will pass the game back to me. And there is a decision point here. Do I want to use the monster hash brown and heal 2 damage on Noelle, or do I want to give it to Liben? So my thinking here is that I want to give it to Liben instead because by giving it to Liben, I get 2 dice. I can always play the hash brown again next turn. And I did calculate that Noelle wouldn't die, should go down to 1, which is exactly what happens here. So unfortunately, my opponent's Fatui agent does have the burst set up. But the thing is, I am going first, and they do have the Pyro application. So what this means is that Noelle can deal geo damage against the Pyro agent and get additional shields online while killing the Pyro agent as well. So I felt pretty comfortable leaving Noelle with just 1 HP, although it is a little bit risky. So with the breastplate online and the enduring rock, essentially I get double shields, and I also just played the hash brown just for good measure, just in case they've got any sort of equipment they can attach to their Noelle and take my own Noelle out. So in this current circumstance, I wouldn't say that I'm in a great position. It is still pretty scary at the moment, but I am fairly comfortable because I know that I can burst this very turn. My opponent, I think they've used both of their extra geo dice already, so I know that they can only attack me once, if I'm not wrong. So I just go straight up for the burst because I've got my shields online anyway, so there's no point for me to play my normal attack, there's no point for me to play my breastplate, so I just decide to play the burst so that I can deplete their shields as well. So notice that even with with the full shields online, double shields online, both Gravestone managed to take both of them out and also deal 2 damage to my opponent's Noelle. So yeah, I would definitely recommend Wolf's Gravestone over the White Claymore.
Leave it all to me.
So even with the breastplate online, that is fine because my opponent only managed to take out 1 of my breastplate and I've got 3 more shields left. And I go first, which also means I would be able to put on more pressure to remove their shields and deal even more damage, because right now it is sweeping time, and therefore I should hopefully be able to attack with Noelle for at least 3 times, assuming that she doesn't die first.
Leave it all to me.
So my opponent does use the Lotus here, and I thought it was fine because um, even if the Lotus was Greystone is still gonna do 2 damage. So yeah,
Time to clean
I
up.
do get swept here, but essentially I can just attack 1 more time and that will be game. So in this particular instance, you can see that I left my Lawachurl in the back because I didn't feel like there was a particular need to use him right now. I didn't want to waste all of his Geo shields. If my Noelle did get taken out, I had a backup plan. So I felt like that was the right time to bring Noelle up front rather than leave her all the way at the back just for that final sweep. So this was the first game, and the next one you would see that I matched up against the same person again. And yeah, let's go on to the next one. So when I was matched up against this opponent again, I actually didn't realize it was the same person. I just remember seeing this team because I played both matches back to back, and I was thinking, oh no, not this team again. I was so tempted to stop recording, just to diversify the kind of matchups that I have in my gameplay videos. But yeah, I thought, yeah, I'll just keep rolling just to see if my deck is, you know, consistently performing consistently against the Noelle Lawachurl mirror. So I just kept it rolling, and it was only when I was editing then I realized, oh yeah, it was the exact same person twice in a row. So yeah, kudos to my opponent for playing it out. Thank you for the games, and yeah. So for this particular one, I was happy to see the Abyssal Summons because you've probably seen, the kind of
Contamination washed
pressure
away.
that is able to apply in the previous game. So in this game, my opponent starts first, and they do the exact same play again. They do keep the Geo Lavacho in, while I keep my Oceanid in as well. I don't know if they realized that I was the same opponent again, but essentially with this particular row, I hit the nut. I have 7 dice I could use for my Oceanid, so I was very happy with this. So I was really happy with this particular hand because I think this allows me to mimic twice and Abyssal Summon and get ready for set up for a huge burst the turn after. But here you can see that I've already taken 4 damage from my opponent, but I didn't mind, not dealing any damage to my opponent's Lawachurl because I see that they only have 1 dice left. They are probably not going to do anything other than swapping out. I don't really mind if they swap out to another character here, so this allows me to set up fully and efficiently. And it does help that I did get 1 Omni dice here. So here you can see that I'm trying to stagger the kind of summons that I have. I summon a Hydro,
Advantage of the
followed by a
wilderness.
Pyro, and then followed by a Hydro again. That way, it allows me to deal damage to my opponent, dealing Hydro, having the extra Vaporize, and then finally going Hydro again. So with the help of my 3 Mimics, I've actually burned through the entire Stonehide shield of their Lawachurl, so I was really happy with that result. With that said, my opponent is going first and is going to put my Oceanid in big trouble because essentially they can set up the burst and get a burst off going before I can. And they have Paimon that help them as well. So here I have the decision point. I can either put another Mimic in and die immediately, or I can, do something, eat the Lotus, and then, you know, die really easily as well. I think I just decide to go for the Lotus and set up for the burst just to see what happens. Um, but yeah, I would argue this is a little bit risky because if they had adapted as Temptation, I would die straight out, just like what happened in the previous round. But in any case, I just decide to apply Hydro to it because I think the plan here is I'm going to eat the burst. I'm going to swap out to my Lawachurl this time. So here you can see me being tempted. It's like, do I really want to do my burst here? The reason why I don't and the reason why I'm hesitating is because if I were to do this, I'm just swapping characters with them. It's not very meaningful. I want to get the advantage just so that I can have a dead character to as a meat shield to put up front in front of either Noelle or the Lawachurl. So after burning that Liban to swap in for a Hydro dice, I'm now considering my other options, which is to swap in the Lawachurl instead. The reason why I want to swap that in is because I can see that my opponent has only 2 dice left. What this means is that they are either going to swap or they're just going to end their turn. I'm actually hoping that they end their turn and don't swap so that I can get additional shields and also knock out their Lawachurl at the same time. Because essentially now my Lawachurl will be able to deal 4 damage because it's his first attack of the turn. So I deal 4 damage, I consume 1 of my Stonehide I think, but essentially I get 1 extra shield online, 1 extra elemental shield online, so I'm quite happy with that. So here you can see my mimics burning through the Fatui agent's shields again, and I'm feeling fairly comfortable here. But my opponent still has Paimon there, so I must respect that. And it is relatively easy for them to set up their Fatui agent's burst anyway. So the reason why I left that Hydro dice in there and didn't re-roll it is because I was thinking if somehow they manage to get rid of my Lawachurl, at least I will be able to, when it dies, I can swap into my Oceanid and do 4 more damage because I do expect them to have, be in the kill zone for my Oceanid. So here you can see that I have my Oceanid still online, I still have Noelle in the back, and my opponent is probably just trying to come in for a huge, huge elemental burst.
An eye for an eye.
Yep, so it does deal 6 damage, ripping through my elemental shields, but I think that is fine. Yeah, because I can still use my skill to blow them out anyway. But this is also the point where I realized that I don't actually need to use my Geohilichurl skill to finish off my opponent. And the reason for that is because my opponent doesn't actually have any dice left. So even if I were to switch into my Oceanid and use my Oceanid skill to finish my opponent off, there is no way that
Contamination
they can
must be
respond.
washed away.
So although, I'm about to use my skill to finish off my opponent's Pyro agent, it does feel pretty good because essentially this means that Noelle will come in next turn, take out my Oceanid, and
The
then
rising
I can
flood.
safely use my Lawachurl. I can use his burst to chip off damage from Noelle. So it does feel pretty good from this perspective for two particular reasons. Because right now during the end phase, my summon is about to deal Hydro application on Noelle, and this allows my Lawachurl to create another shield when he attacks Noelle. I can't remember whether Noelle is still able to take me out, um, even with those two shields on board. But yeah, let's see. So here you can see my opponent using one of my favorite cards in the Geo team, the Resonance card that gives you additional
I
shields.
must leave Gravestone
So
and
even
return.
if I didn't have any sort of elemental application on my Oceanid, my opponent still managed to get 5 shields off, which is really, really respectable. And here I'm just considering, which cards I should burn in order to enable my Geolawatro to attack. I'm also trying to think about whether I should be using my burst or my skill, because if I were to use my burst, I don't get the full value out of the damage, but I do get an additional shield. The problem here is that, if I don't use my burst and then I use my skill, my opponent is not able to knock me out this turn anyway. But I just thought, let's just be safe, just in case they have any sort of weapons in hand that they can attach, and therefore take out my Lawachurl. So I decided not to be greedy and just went for the burst. And here you can start to see my opponent using both of their extra Geo dice, which is really good information because it just means that
I must
next
leave
turn
Gravestone and
they should
return.
not be able to overextend beyond the 8 dice that they are allocated to unless they eat some sort of food that enables them to activate Chef Mao and get an extra die. Here I'm just trying to consider, do I want to go for the extra damage or summon the Abyssal Summon. Yep. And what I do go for is the normal attack. It's really just to burn the shields that my opponent has, because I also recognize that my opponent does not have any dice left, and therefore I'm free to do both things that I have in my hand, which is to take out the shields and then wait for the end of turn for my Hydro Applicant to apply some damage, and then for the Electro to apply some Vaporize. So actually I got really lucky here. I could have gotten two Hydro Applicants here if I were to summon a Hydro Heliodro, but luckily I got the fire one, which enabled me to get the Vaporize effect off. So my opponent does
As
go
you
for the normal
wish.
attack here, probably trying to save the sweeping time for the next attack against my Noelle. And what I'm thinking here is whether I want to attach my Wolf's Gravestone to my Noelle. And I think this is pretty important because I'm assuming that next turn, if my opponent has 5 dice, they are probably going to use Sweeping Time on me, leaving me on 6 HP. And what I can then do is to end my turn so that I can go first next, and then pass over to them so that I can potentially deal lots of damage with my Wolf's Gravestone. But I'm actually surprised that they don't actually go for the sweeping time right now. They probably like the dice there. But my Hilichurl manages to chip down another damage against Noelle.
Leave it all to
And
me.
here we can see my opponent trying to get their defenses up, which is slightly annoying because as you can see, basically my Wolf's Greystone attack is only, even with the Wolf's Greystone, my Noah only attacks for 3 damage with her normal attack, and the shield is blocking out entirely. So I'm just trying to think about, what's the best way that I can maximize my attacks here. So by eating that food there, essentially my Noah will be able to attack 3 times. And attacking for my opponent for 3 times should be able to take out all the shields and also apply additional damage.
As a dutiful
And
maiden,
luckily, they
this
didn't have
will
enough
never
shields
end.
to block the damage of my Noelle, and therefore was able to use the burst and get the kill. So well done to my opponent. It was very close for both games. Really appreciate the rigorous testing for mirror testing for Noelle. Yeah, if you like this video, like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.